Hello again. This is the second video to introduce the new book, For the Sake of Civility, also Existence Uniformity. Those are both a lot about physics. They introduce a different kind of physics system than what we presently have, an alternative to relativity, to quantum mechanics, and a alternative to the Big Bang Theory. This is a universe model where everything has always existed and it is recycling. And when the galaxies exhibit redshift, and those that are farther away exhibit more redshift, meaning they're moving away faster, that's caused by gravity. Just like when someone jumps without opening their parachute for a period of time, they're accelerating the entire time they're falling. So would heavenly or celestial bodies when, or galaxies, when they are returning to a collection source from which they were expelled or erupted from as individual photons that make atoms and molecules, then galaxies, etc. I'm also introducing this new materialist naturalist periodic table that has a different basis from what the present periodic table has, with the protons, the number of protons in the nucleus determining which element it is, and when you add another proton, you change the element. This system is based on configurations of nuclei determining which properties a certain atom has, which element it is. Anyway, I believe that this other interpretation that has not this one, but the one that is behind the standard model of the atom, came to be because of a misinterpretation of magnets. I want to talk about that here. Anyway, I believe that what has led to this negative positive interpretation can be demonstrated with a couple of bar magnets. When I first began to explore physics, this started for me when I was preparing to write my first book about it, Endless Cycle Universe, in the fall of 2007. In doing so, the first thing I did was I got a couple of bar magnets, and I wanted to see what I thought was happening, whether there was actually negatives and positives occurring with those, or was this a particle phenomenon that was occurring where you get this repel between the magnets. And you get attraction, of course. Now these two are color-coded. The two north poles are colored red, the two south poles are colored blue. And what I would contend is occurring with bar magnets is that they are entering the north pole. Just like with the Earth, the magnetic field enters the north pole of the Earth, flows down through the Earth, what I believe is magnetite near the surface of the molten area within the Earth. I believe what causes magnets, let me say that right off the bat, radiation scatters off some mid-charged photons that are on the surfaces of nucleons in between the electrons that are attached. On a typical nucleon, there are 16 beta electrons that are attached that can be emitted during radioactivity, which is a very common occurrence. Also, alpha particles is a very common form of radioactivity emissions, or rather radioactive decays, which are helium nuclei. They may come off as a couple of neutrons, and then they're followed by a couple of protons, and then they automatically form into a helium-4 nucleus, and they pick up electrons, and then as far as how nucleons are constructed, which I discussed in video 1, that more concerns that the fact of how beta decays come from these nucleons and a lot of radioactive decays. And those are beta electrons that are in my system. There are 16 valleys where those would be located. Now they can lose one of those, and then when they do, from the environment, certain mid-charged positive photons will come in and try to ameliorate the spot where some have been lost, and they can't quite do that as well as a beta electron can do, but they come in and try to substitute, and that shortens the mass. That would shorten the mass of a particular nucleon that has ejected a beta electron from its surface, and that's another reason why the masses of protons and neutrons, which is very similar if they're fully loaded, but they can vary based on which ones have experienced some beta decays, for example. But anyway, getting back to the magnets, the misinterpretation of magnets that I would contend has led to an error with the standard model of the atom and its periodic table. What I contend is happening is that mid-positive photons are entering the North Pole. In this case, it's the red colored pole. Now you can't actually, let me back up and say this, you can't actually tell which is the North and South Pole of a pair of bar magnets. What you do is you find out which two repel. You can either make, in this case, make those red or blue, and you just make the two that repel either red or blue, and then you make the other one, whichever color you choose for that one. The other one's the opposites, which repel also. You make those the corresponding color, red or blue. But anyway, what I believe is happening is these, and what I determined early on when starting to observe bar magnets when first starting to study physics, I believed that there were mid-positive photons that have mild repel to one another coming into the North Pole and exiting the South Pole, just like the Earth. The Earth has a magnetic pole, have two magnetic poles, a north and a south. And in that case, they exit the South Pole. These particles move around through space and then re-enter the Earth at the North Pole. And these particles have mass in that they're able to block solar radiation, which would be harmful to us. And these are streaming in enough of a profuse manner that they are able to accomplish that blocking of those charged particles and various constituents in solar radiation that would be harmful to us. In a bar magnet, these are flowing out the south poles, and because they have mild repel, they cause the two poles to repel. These are not two negative poles repelling. In the atom model, standard model of the atom, it is believed that negatives repel negatives, positives repel positives, and that opposites, positive and negative being opposite, they would attract. And that's an oversimplified interpretation of magnets. All kinds of processes in physics, whether it's a cyclotron smashing protons into different materials to change their the isotopes they contain, to damage nuclei in nucleons in the nuclei of those atoms, such as things as that. They know that there's a direction of the flow, and you can introduce electric current with that magnetic flow, and you can speed it up, or you can enhance it, or make it more concentrated, more powerful. But anyway, when they do, they use magnetic fields in the case of mass spectrometers. They know that there's a direction of the flow, and that how much in that flow that the vapor of any given element is passed through that and moved to the side. That's how you determine the mass. If it moves more, it has less mass. If it moves less, it has more mass if it moves less. It is well known that there's a flow of moving, there's a medium that is moving in a direction when it comes to magnets. And this can be reproduced with electric current as well. In the dynamo, the generators, you have magnets, you have rotors with, let's say, copper wire immersed, and they spin these in the profusion of these electric photons being introduced from magnet pole to magnet pole, and this stirring or spinning of this rotor disturbs the surfaces, or actually it's the electron shells, or if they also have these spherical radio shells under those, and those get disturbed, and then these can substitute. These electric photons can take up temporary residence in those shells, and that's what's occurring with generators. But anyway, with magnets, bar magnets, these photons are flowing through. The reason that they only enter the poles is because of the structure of the material. It's prohibitive, the way it's structured, to accept those on the sides that are not poles. On the sides that are poles, it's open and receptive. And the scouring caused by radiation is what causes some of those surface mid-positive photons to be lost on nucleons inside of the nuclei within these atoms and magnets, and that there's an attraction deficit that is trying to be ameliorated by the surrounding environment that contains all kinds of electrons and different middle charged photons that are left over after composites have been made in nucleosynthesis and as atoms are constructed automatically. I've mentioned that already, but this is a misinterpretation of atoms, or excuse me, of magnets, that has led to the way that our current standard model of the atom has been set up.